Chapter 1. The moment you no longer recognize yourself. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you were staring at a stranger? Your eyes were the same, your face unchanged, but something deep within you whispered, "Who am I?" That moment, when everything you once believed about yourself begins to crumble, is the beginning of what many call ego death. And in the twin flame journey, this is not just a phase. It's the doorway, the point of no return where your soul begins to take the lead, and your identity, the one carefully built over years, starts to dissolve. But let's pause for a second. Why would something as beautiful as love lead to something that feels like destruction? Why would meeting the one who mirrors your soul cause you to lose your sense of self? The answer lies in the paradox of divine love. To truly become one, the illusion of separation must die. The fall of the familiar. When you first meet your twin flame, it feels like coming home. There's recognition, warmth, electricity, something ancient and sacred. You see yourself in their eyes and think, "Finally, I found the missing piece." But that feeling doesn't last forever. Soon, the very connection that once felt like heaven starts to burn through your illusions. The relationship might turn chaotic, or even fall apart. Communication stops. You can't make sense of their actions or your own. And that's when the dismantling begins. Everything you thought defined you, your confidence, your values, your goals, your emotional control, suddenly begins to collapse. You start asking questions that have no easy answers. Why do I react this way? Why do I feel both love and pain so deeply? Why can't I just move on? This is ego death. Not a physical death, but a spiritual unraveling. A collapse of everything false, everything that isn't truly you. Ego, the architect of illusion. Before we go deeper, let's talk about what the ego really is. Ego isn't evil. It's the psychological structure that gives you a sense of individuality. It's the part of you that says, "I am this and not that." It helps you survive in the physical world by separating me from you. But the problem begins when ego takes over your spiritual identity. It convinces you that your worth depends on how others see you, how much you have, or whether your love is returned. It whispers, "I need to be chosen to be enough. I need to control the outcome to feel safe. If they leave, I lose everything." In the twin flame journey, your counterpart doesn't allow this illusion to survive. Their energy is a mirror, so pure, so intense, that it exposes every hidden corner of your ego. They show you not just love, but also every unhealed wound within that blocks love. They trigger your abandonment wounds, your jealousy, your control patterns. And at first it feels like they're destroying you. But what they're really doing is helping you remember who you are without the mask, the mirror that shatters you. Imagine standing before a mirror that reflects not your face, but your soul. You see both your light and your shadow, your unconditional love, but also your fear, your pride, your pain. That's what meeting your twin flame does. It's not just romantic. It's cosmic surgery. The mirror cracks, and every piece that falls shows you something you've denied for years. Maybe you realize you've been living to please others. Maybe you see how much you depend on being loved to feel worthy. Maybe you recognize that you've been chasing validation instead of truth. Each revelation hurts. It feels like betrayal, loss, or even death. But what's actually dying is not you. It's the identity that was never truly yours. When control fails, the ego's favorite illusion is control. Control gives you a sense of safety. If I plan, if I protect myself, if I hold on tightly, nothing can hurt me. But in the twin flame connection, control always fails. No matter what you do, you can't force them to stay, you can't make them understand, and you can't predict what will happen next. And in that helplessness, the ego panics. It fights, resists, blames, runs, chases, anything to avoid surrender. But the more you resist, the more the universe tightens its grip. Everything that isn't rooted in truth starts to fall apart: relationships, careers, belief systems, even your sense of time. You're not being punished. You're being purified. Every illusion must burn so that your essence can rise. The threshold of nothingness. At some point, the pain becomes too much. You stop fighting. You stop trying to understand. You stop begging for clarity. You just sit in the silence. This is the threshold of ego death, the moment where you no longer have answers, and strangely, you no longer need them. You feel empty but peaceful. You feel lost yet strangely guided. You don't know who you are anymore. But you sense something far greater moving through you. This is where your soul begins to whisper. You were never meant to hold it all together. You were meant to let it all fall apart so you could remember what remains. And what remains is love. Not the kind that needs to be returned, not the kind that needs validation, just love as being. A story to remember. Imagine a caterpillar crawling inside its cocoon. From the outside it looks like death, the body dissolves, the form collapses. But inside that darkness, a miracle is happening. Every cell is rearranging itself into something new, something capable of flight. Ego death is that cocoon stage. Painful, confusing, silent, but necessary. Because the person you were cannot meet your twin flame in true union. Only your soul can. So the universe strips away everything that isn't your soul, until all that remains is truth. The paradox of dying to live. Here's the greatest paradox of all. Ego death feels like dying, but it's the first time you truly start to live. You stop chasing, stop proving, stop pretending. You begin to breathe from your heart, not your fear. You realize love isn't something to get, it's something you are. You see that even separation is an illusion, because your twin flame was never outside of you. They were always within, guiding you home to yourself. A whisper from the soul. You're in that phase now, lost, numb, questioning everything. Please know this, you're not going crazy. You're awakening. You're watching your old self dissolve so your higher self can rise. Let it happen. Cry if you must. Grieve the illusions you once loved. Because beyond this darkness, there's a light so radiant that you'll wonder why you ever feared the fall. You'll understand that what you thought was an ending was actually an invitation to live from truth, not illusion. And one day when you look in the mirror again, you'll finally recognize the eyes staring back at you. Not as the person you used to be, but as the soul you've always been. Closing reflection. So if love has brought you to your knees, if you feel like you've lost everything, take heart. You haven't lost. You're being reborn. Because when the ego dies, the soul begins to breathe. And that breath is the beginning of freedom. Chapter 2. The Twin Flame and the Role of Ego. Architect of Illusion. When we talk about the twin flame journey, we often speak about destiny, divine love, and reunion. Yet beneath all those luminous ideas lies a truth that's harder to face. Before you can unite with your twin flame, you must confront the one thing that has ruled you your entire life, your ego. And make no mistake, your twin flame doesn't come to flatter your ego. They come to destroy it, but not as punishment. They destroy it so that love, real love, can finally take its place. The birth of the ego. The first separation. Let's go back to the beginning. Before you were born, before you even took your first breath, your soul existed in wholeness. It knew only unity. No fear, no judgment, no comparison. It was love itself. But the moment you entered the physical world, you began to forget. You looked around and saw other people, other faces, other needs. And little by little, your mind began to build walls. You learned what pleased others and what didn't. You learned to hide parts of yourself to be accepted. You learned that love could be given or taken away. That's when the ego was born. The ego is not evil. It's a natural survival mechanism. It helps you function in a world of duality. It says, I am this body. I am this name. I am separate. But over time, this necessary tool becomes a cage. You start to believe that your identity, your worth, depends on things outside yourself. How you look, how others treat you, what you achieve, or who chooses to love you. The ego becomes the architect of illusion, constructing layer after layer to protect itself from the pain of separation. And then one day your twin flame arrives. The arrival of the mirror. When you meet your twin flame, it's like looking into the purest mirror that ever existed. They don't just see your smile. They see through it. They don't fall for the mask you show the world. They recognize the soul underneath. That's why the connection feels so intense. You're not falling in love with another person. You're falling into your own reflection. But the ego can't stand that kind of exposure. They spent years building defenses and suddenly, this person walks in and dismantles them just by existing. At first it feels divine. Your hearts synchronize, your minds intertwine. Your energy dances as one. But soon every hidden wound begins to surface. Every part of you that doesn't align with truth begins to tremble. Why? Because your twin flame's purpose isn't to make your ego feel safe. It's to make your soul remember. The ego's defense mechanisms. When ego feels threatened, it doesn't go quietly. It resists, it rationalizes, it attacks, it blames. You start overanalyzing every message, every silence. You demand clarity, you crave control, you try to fix them or yourself, because uncertainty feels unbearable. The ego whispers, if they really loved me, they wouldn't leave. If I were enough, they choose me. I have to do something to win them back. But what you're really trying to protect isn't love, it's identity. The ego believes love is a transaction. If I give, I must receive. If I lose them, I lose myself. So when the twin flame connection challenges that logic, ego feels like it's dying. It clings to familiar narratives. They betrayed me. They ghosted me. They don't understand me. But beneath those stories, something deeper is happening. Your soul is saying, stop chasing. Start seeing. Stop defending. Start surrendering. Because what's breaking isn't love, it's illusion. The roles of runner and chaser. Nowhere is the ego's battle more visible than in the runner and chaser dynamic. When one person pulls away, it's usually the ego trying to survive. The runner's ego fears losing independence, control, or identity. Love feels too vast, too consuming, so they flee. The chaser's ego fears rejection, abandonment, or unworthiness. Love feels like the last thread holding their world together, so they cling. But both are mirrors of the same wound. The illusion of separation. The more the runner runs, the more the chaser chases. The more the chaser chases, the more the runner runs. It's a divine dance orchestrated not by cruelty, but by love that refuses to let you stay asleep. Because only when both surrender, only when both egos collapse, can the souls truly meet. The ego's favorite illusion, control. Control is ego's greatest addiction. It wants to define how love should look, when it should happen, and who it should come from. It says, they have to text me. We must reunite by this date. They should change, not me. But love, true love, cannot be controlled. You can't demand light to shine brighter, or the ocean to stop its waves. You can only flow with it. When you finally surrender control, something miraculous happens. The energy between you and your twin flame starts to balance. You stop acting out of fear and start moving from peace. You stop expecting and start trusting. You stop trying to make them return and start returning to yourself. And that's the moment the ego begins to lose its grip. The ego's fear, dissolution. To the ego, surrender feels like death. It believes that if it stops controlling, it will disappear. But what actually happens is the opposite. You discover life beyond limitation. When the ego dissolves, it doesn't vanish, it transforms. It becomes a servant to the soul instead of its master. You begin to make choices not from fear of loss, but from alignment with truth. You stop reacting and start responding. You love without needing love back. The ego cries, you're losing everything. But the soul whispers, no, you're remembering everything. The inner revolution. Every twin flame connection triggers a silent revolution inside you. Your mind says, they broke my heart. But your higher self says, I broke open so that light could enter. Your ego says, they're gone. Your soul says, they were never separate from me. This is where real transformation begins, when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this showing me about myself? You begin to see your pain not as punishment, but as purification. You start to view triggers as invitations. You realize that every conflict, every silence, every rejection is a mirror pointing you back to the parts of yourself still longing for love. And that's when the shift happens, from ego-based love to soul-based love. Love without ownership. Ego-based love says, you are mine. Soul-based love says, you are free. Ego wants promises and labels. Soul wants presence and truth. When you begin to see through the eyes of the soul, you understand that your twin flame doesn't belong to you. They are you. And because they are you, there's no need to control, chase, or possess. Your love becomes liberation. You no longer see separation as loss. You see it as space for transformation. You stop fighting the flow of the connection and start trusting its divine timing. The moment you release ownership, you create room for the divine to work. The ego's final trick, the spiritual ego. Even after the ego begins to fade, it often comes back wearing a new disguise, the spiritual ego. It says, I'm more awakened than my twin flame. I understand the journey better. I've already healed, they haven't. This version of ego hides behind spiritual language, but its vibration is the same: comparison, superiority, separation. True awakening is humble. It knows that everyone moves at their own pace, that love needs no hierarchy. It doesn't seek to be right, it seeks to be real. The moment you recognize this trick, laugh gently. Ego doesn't need punishment. It needs understanding. Every time you choose compassion over pride, the spiritual ego loses power. The return of balance. As the ego softens, life becomes simpler. You begin to enjoy silence instead of fearing it. You see divine timing instead of delay. You find peace in uncertainty because you trust that love, real love, never leaves. Your twin flame journey shifts from chaos to clarity, from reaction to reflection. You no longer crave union to feel complete, you feel complete, and that completeness naturally draws union closer. The ego was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It created contrast so you could discover what you are not, and in doing so, remember what you are. Closing. Reflection. So when your ego screams, I'm losing control, smile. Because that's the sound of awakening. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the illusion of yourself. The ego built the walls. Love comes to tear them down. The ego sought safety, the soul seeks truth. And truth, pure, radiant, eternal, is what your twin flame came to remind you of. Let the architect of illusion crumble. Because once those walls fall, love doesn't need to be found anymore. It's simply there, shining through everything. Chapter 3. Why the twin flame journey always involves the collapse of ego. Path of sacred breakdown. There is a reason the twin flame journey feels so intense, unpredictable, and at times unbearable. It's not because the universe is cruel or because you did something wrong. It's because the soul's awakening cannot happen without the ego's collapse. You cannot ascend while still clinging to illusions. You cannot embody unconditional love while still being ruled by fear. And the ego by nature is fear. That is why every twin flame story contains a sacred breakdown, an inner earthquake that shakes everything false until only truth remains. The universe is brutal. Kindness. At first glance, the twin flame connection appears like the ultimate romance. You meet someone who mirrors your soul, understands your silence, and awakens feelings you never knew existed. Feels divine, and it is. But soon that divine light starts to burn through your shadows. Every insecurity, every old wound, every false identity you've clung to begins to surface. It's confusing. You might think, if this is divine love, why does it hurt so much? The answer is paradoxical, because it is divine love. The universe isn't trying to break your heart. It's trying to break your walls. It's trying to strip away the illusions that kept you from real love. Love that doesn't depend on possession or validation. This process is the collapse of ego, and it's the only path to true union. The ego's fragile foundation. To understand why this collapse is inevitable, you must first understand what the ego is built on. Ego thrives on separation. It defines itself by contrast. I am this, you are that. I am good, they are wrong. I am worthy only if they choose me. It creates boundaries not to connect, but to protect. It lives in stories, labels, and expectations. And when you meet your twin flame, those boundaries dissolve. You begin to feel what they feel, dream what they dream, ache when they ache. The illusion of separateness shatters. But to the ego, this is terrifying. Because if you and your twin flame are truly one, then what happens to the I? What happens to the identity that the ego spent a lifetime constructing? That's why the ego fights back. It resists the connection, rationalizes it, denies it, or tries to control it. It will do anything to maintain its illusion of independence, even if that means running from the very love that could set it free. The sacred chaos of breakdown. When the ego can no longer hold its structure, life starts to rearrange itself. Everything that isn't aligned with your soul begins to fall apart: relationships, jobs, habits, even beliefs you thought were permanent. It's not punishment. It's alignment. The twin flame journey is like a spiritual fire. It doesn't destroy for destructions. Sake, it burns to purify. Imagine gold being refined in a furnace. The impurities melt away, not because the gold was bad, but because the heat reveals its true essence. In the same way, your ego must melt for your divine self to emerge. You'll find yourself questioning everything. Who am I without them? What do I really want? What is love if not this pain? These questions don't appear to torment you, they appear to awaken you. Each one is a doorway back to your truth. Pain as a portal. In ordinary relationships, pain often signals something is wrong. But in the twin flame journey, pain is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of transformation. Pain is the ego's alarm system. It rings loudly when something threatens its control. And nothing threatens ego more than unconditional love. That's why this journey feels like dying while still being alive. Because in a way you are dying. The old you is dying. You're shedding versions of yourself that were built on fear. The one who needed to be chosen. The one who chased validation. The one who believed love must be earned. In the ashes of that identity, the soul begins to rise. It whispers softly, "You were never meant to be loved for what you do. You were born to be loved for what you are." Losing everything to gain yourself. There comes a point when the collapse feels complete. You've cried every tear, replayed every memory, questioned every motive. And now there's silence. You look around and realize you've lost almost everything familiar. Friends drift away. Goals no longer make sense. Even your twin flame may be gone. And yet something deeper awakens. A quiet knowing that maybe, for the first time, you haven't lost at all. Because what fell away wasn't truth, it was attachment. What disappeared wasn't love, it was illusion. The ego wants possession. I want them to be mine. The soul wants union. I am already one with them. That's the difference between losing someone and finding yourself. The divine purpose of separation. Many twin flames experience physical or emotional separation. It's painful, yes, but it's also essential. Separation is not rejection. It's refinement. It gives both souls the space to heal independently, to shed their egos without projecting them onto each other. Think of it like pruning a tree. You cut away branches not to destroy it, but to help it grow stronger, fuller, and more aligned with the light. During separation, the ego screams, "They abandoned me." But the soul whispers, "They're helping me become whole." Because real union isn't two wounded halves clinging to each other. It's two whole souls meeting without need, without fear, without masks. And for that to happen, ego must die completely. The collapse as an initiation. If you could see your journey from the soul's perspective, you'd realize the collapse isn't chaos. It's initiation. You are being initiated into divine consciousness. Every breakdown is a breakthrough in disguise. Every ending is an opening. Every silence is a sacred pause where the universe rewires your energy for a higher vibration. The collapse of ego is like lightning hitting a forest. Yes, it burns, but it also makes room for new life. The soil becomes fertile again. The light reaches places it couldn't before. Are being cleared for rebirth. When the soul takes the lead, as ego dissolves, the world looks different. You no longer see your twin flame as mine or theirs. You see them as a reflection of the same divine essence that lives in you. You begin to understand that the purpose of this journey was never romantic completion. It was spiritual liberation. You stop chasing love and start being love. You stop begging for union and start embodying union. And in that shift, the connection transforms. Communication may return or it may not, but either way there is peace. Because true union is not about two bodies coming together. It's about two souls vibrating in harmony, even across distance. Surrender. The final fall of ego. Ego death culminates in one sacred act. Surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but of trust. You stop resisting the flow of life. You stop fighting for control. You let the divine plan unfold without forcing outcomes. And as you do, the suffering eases. The pain doesn't vanish instantly, but it transforms. From chaos to clarity, from grief to gratitude. You realize that every moment of heartbreak was love in disguise. A teacher, a purifier, a catalyst for awakening. Surrender is not giving up on your twin flame. It's giving up on the illusion that love could ever be lost. The gift hidden in the collapse. If you are in this phase, if your world feels like it's falling apart, remember this. It's not destruction, it's rebirth. The universe is not taking something from you. It's returning you to yourself. The collapse of ego is the return to truth. The death of illusion is the birth of freedom. And one day when you look back, you'll see that nothing real was ever lost. Your twin flame didn't come to complete you, they came to awaken you. They came to help you remember that the love you were seeking was always within. Closing reflection. So when you find yourself in darkness, when nothing makes sense, trust the collapse. Let it take you apart. Let it burn everything false. Because what survives that fire is indestructible. What remains after ego dies is love, pure and eternal. And that love is you. Chapter 4. The signs you're experiencing ego death. From breakdown to awakening. There comes a time in the twin flame journey when the external world stops making sense. What once brought joy now feels hollow. What once gave comfort now feels meaningless. You look around and realize that you no longer belong to the same world you once knew. This is not depression. It's not madness. It's the sacred unraveling of your identity. The process known as ego death. And though it feels like falling apart, what's actually happening is a profound reconstruction of consciousness. The false self is dissolving so that the true self, the soul, can finally lead. In this chapter, we'll walk through the signs that you're undergoing ego death on your twin flame path, and what each one really means beneath the surface. 1. The collapse of external meaning. The first sign is disorientation. The things that once defined you, your job, your goals, your achievements, even your relationships, suddenly lose their spark. You wake up and feel disconnected. The clothes you wear, the music you loved, the people you spent time with, they no longer fit. It's as if life's colors have faded. You might ask yourself, what's the point? Or who am I now? The ego panics here because its world was built on those external meanings. But what's really happening is an energetic detachment from illusion. The soul is pulling you back to your essence, stripping away everything false so that only authenticity remains. This isn't a loss. It's a cleansing. 2. Emotional turbulence and the dark night. Ego death doesn't come quietly. It tears through every layer of your being. You may experience mood swings, sudden bursts of grief, anger, fear, or nostalgia. It's what mystics have called the dark night of the soul. A period when light seems absent, and everything feels meaningless. In the twin flame journey, this emotional storm is amplified by your connection. You might feel your counterpart's pain as if it were your own. You may have vivid dreams, energetic waves, or sudden heart activations that bring you to tears. Without reason. You're not broken, you're becoming whole. This turbulence happens because your nervous system is releasing years of suppressed emotion. Every unhealed wound rises to the surface so it can finally be seen, felt, and transmuted. The only way out is through. Cry. Scream. Write. Pray. Do not resist the storm, it's washing you clean. 3. Feeling empty or dead inside. One of the most unsettling signs of ego death is the feeling of emptiness. You may wake up and feel like there's nothing left inside you. No motivation, no emotion, no desire. It's not that you've lost life. It's that you've lost the false life the ego created. Think of it like clearing an old hard drive. Before new data can be uploaded, the old files must be erased. That sense of void is sacred space. It's the silence between the last breath of the old you and the first breath of the new you. Don't rush to fill it. Let the emptiness do its work. In that stillness, the soul begins to whisper. Softly, patiently, lovingly. Reminding you who you really are. 4. The disappearance of control. Another sign is the loss of control. Everything you try to plan falls apart. The harder you push, the more resistance you face. In relationships, this manifests as the runner-chaser dynamic, reaching a dead end. You can't force communication. You can't make your twin flame return. You can't predict what will happen next. And that powerlessness feels unbearable until you realize it's divine. Because control belongs to the ego. Surrender belongs to the soul. The universe is teaching you to trust, not in outcomes but in alignment. Every delay, every silence, Every detour is a redirection toward your higher path. The more you let go, the more things begin to flow again, effortlessly, synchronistically, beautifully. 5. Intense mirror triggers. The hallmark of the twin flame connection is mirroring. When you're in ego death, this mirror becomes sharper than ever. Your counterpart may trigger your deepest wounds, abandonment, rejection, betrayal, often without meaning to. Every time they pull away, it stirs the part of you that still believes you're not enough. Every misunderstanding becomes a reflection of the fears you haven't yet healed. It's easy to blame them, and sometimes they do behave in hurtful ways. But beneath it all, the universe is showing you this pain is not new. It's ancient. What you're feeling now is the echo of every lifetime you've been separated from love, including the love within yourself. When you can face that pain without running or blaming, the mirror softens. It no longer wounds, it illuminates. 6. Dissolution of identity. As your ego collapses, you might struggle to answer simple questions. What do I want? What do I believe? Who am I? You may feel like your personality is fading, like the roles you've played, the healer, the achiever, the caretaker, no longer make sense. That's because those roles were costumes. They served a purpose, to help you survive, to earn love, to belong. But now the soul is saying, you no longer need to perform. Just be. During this phase, solitude becomes sacred. You might withdraw from social media, friends, or even your twin flame. It's not isolation, it's incubation. You are in the chrysalis, melting down everything false to become something new, something radiant and real. 7. Physical and energetic symptoms. Ego death isn't just emotional, it's energetic. You may experience strange sensations, heart palpitations, heat waves, tingling in the crown or spine, ringing in the ears, fatigue, or vivid dreams. Your energy field is recalibrating. Your body is adjusting to a higher vibration, releasing dense frequencies stored in your cells. Sometimes this process feels like illness, but rather than being sick, you're purging. You're shedding everything your body held on to. From years of unconscious living. Drink water. Rest. Ground yourself. The human vessel is learning how to hold more light. 8. Deep compassion and expanded awareness. After the storm comes a strange calm. A soft compassion that wasn't there before. You start to see your twin flame not as the villain or the savior, but as a mirror soul walking their own sacred path. You realize that their silence was not rejection but reflection. Their distance was not punishment but protection for both of you. You begin to forgive, not because they deserve it but because you do. Because holding on to resentment feels heavy in a heart that's learning to fly. And as forgiveness deepens, awareness expands. You start seeing signs everywhere. Feathers, numbers, synchronicities. You sense the interconnectedness of all things. You no longer need proof, you simply know. 9. The emergence of stillness. Eventually everything slows down. You stop overanalyzing, stop reacting. Stop chasing meaning in every message or dream. You just are. This stillness isn't apathy, it's mastery. It's the moment when you realize peace was never something to find. It was something to remember. The ego craves drama because it needs stimulation to feel alive. The soul thrives in stillness because it is life itself. In that stillness, you feel the sacred pulse of the universe within. You sense your twin flame's energy without needing contact. You know love has never left, because you never left yourself. 10. A quiet rebirth. Then one day, without warning, you feel light. Again. Not the ecstatic, overblown high of the early days, but a gentle radiance, steady and serene. You look back and realize that the pain didn't destroy you. It refined you. You're no longer the person who entered the journey. You're softer yet stronger. You're humbler yet freer. You no longer chase love, you embody it. That is the final sign of ego death. Rebirth. You emerge not as who you were, but as who you truly are, infinite consciousness expressing itself through a human heart. The separation between you and them fades. You see life not as happening to you, but through you. And you understand that the twin flame journey was never about finding another person. It was always about finding God within yourself. Closing reflection. If you're in the midst of these symptoms, the confusion, the emptiness, the loss, take heart. You are not going backward. You are awakening. The collapse you feel is not destruction. It's purification. The emptiness you fear is not void, it's divine space. The silence you hear is not absence. It's the sound of your soul returning home. Remember, what dies in ego death was never truly you. And what remains after? The fire is untouchable, eternal, whole. So breathe. Surrender. Let the old you fall away. Because in that falling, the wings of your true self are being born. Chapter 5. The difference between loss and liberation. When letting go becomes freedom. There comes a moment in every twin flame journey when you are forced to face the truth that terrifies the ego the most. You might lose them. You feel them pulling away, retreating into silence. Messages go unanswered. The energy fades, or maybe it shifts into something unrecognizable. And suddenly the world that once glowed with their presence feels hollow. Your first instinct is panic. Your mind races for explanations. Did I do something wrong? Did they stop loving me? You search for signs, for closure, for a reason to keep holding on. But what if this loss isn't a punishment? What if it's a doorway? What if this heartbreak isn't meant to destroy you but to set you free? Because in truth, what you're losing is not love. What's slipping away is the illusion of possession. 1. The illusion of ownership. From childhood, we were taught to attach. We called it love, but often it was fear in disguise, fear of being alone, fear of being unseen, fear of being unworthy. The ego's version of love says, "You are mine." It clings. It controls. It builds cages made of promises and conditions. But the soul's version of love says, "You are free." It holds without holding. It gives without grasping. It lets each being unfold in their own divine rhythm. The twin flame journey exists to teach that difference. It pulls the two of you together not so you can claim one another, but so you can mirror the places where you still confuse attachment for love. When separation arrives, it feels like loss. But in truth, it's liberation. An invitation to discover a love that can exist even without ownership. 2. When the heart breaks, it opens. The ego calls heartbreak a tragedy. But to the soul, heartbreak is initiation. When the heart breaks, it cracks open the walls built around it. Walls of pride, expectation, control. And through those cracks, light pours in. You begin to feel everything. The pain, yes, but also compassion. The longing, but also gratitude. The emptiness, but also grace. The same love that once burned as obsession now transforms into devotion, not toward the person, but toward the essence within both of you. The universe doesn't take away love to make you suffer. It breaks your heart to show you that love was never in another person. It was always you. 3. The false equation. Separation equals loss. The human mind works in equations. If they're here, I am loved. If they leave, I am unloved. But this logic collapses on the spiritual path. Because true love doesn't disappear when someone leaves. It simply changes form. Love is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. When your twin flame steps away, the connection doesn't die. It simply shifts from physical interaction to energetic evolution. You start to feel them in your dreams, in songs, in signs. You notice synchronicities guiding you, comforting you, teaching you that the bond was never based on proximity but on essence. It's the ego that screams loss. The soul whispers expansion. 4. The power of letting go. Letting go is not forgetting. It's not pretending you never loved them. It's not suppressing your emotions or cutting cords in anger. Letting go is surrendering the story, the idea that things must unfold in a certain way for you to be whole. It's releasing control and trusting that love knows the way back to itself. It's saying, even if they never return, I will still love. Not because I need to, but because I am love. True letting go doesn't erase connection. It sanctifies it. It allows both souls to rise without chains, to heal without fear, and to meet again not as broken halves, but as conscious beings. You can love someone deeply and still set them free. In fact, that is the highest form of love, the one that reflects divine consciousness. 5. The shift from why me to thank you. During the collapse, you'll ask the same question everyone asks. Why me? Why did I have to meet them? Why did I have to lose them? Why couldn't it just be simple? But one day, Something shifts. You look back and realize that the pain sculpted you into something luminous. You see how the silence made you listen to your soul. You notice how the separation made you learn. Self-worth, self-compassion, self-trust. And why me? Turns into thank you. Thank you for awakening me. Thank you for showing me what love is and what it is not. Thank you for leaving when I needed to find myself. The ego mourns endings. The soul celebrates transformation. 6. The difference between losing a person and losing a possibility. Ego death teaches that what hurts the most isn't losing them. It's losing the version of life you imagine with them. You grieve the plans, the potential, the vision of union your mind constructed. But those were projections, not promises. They belong to the timeline of the old self, the self that believed fulfillment depended on another. When that version dissolves, the grief feels unbearable. But if you look closer, beneath the pain there is peace. Because now you are no longer living in illusion. You're not chasing what could be. You're standing in what is. And what is? This moment, this breath, this stillness, is love in its purest form. 7. Freedom disguised as loss. Liberation rarely arrives as joy. It arrives disguised as endings. Comes when the job you hated collapses. When the relationship you idealized dissolves. When the person you thought was your forever walks away. First it feels cruel. But later, you see that the universe was never taking something from you, it was removing what no longer resonated with you. You cannot rise while carrying chains. You cannot ascend while holding on to versions of love rooted in fear. Every goodbye is sacred, because it's clearing the path for alignment with who you are becoming. Freedom isn't found when nothing is lost. Freedom is found when you realize that even in loss, nothing essential can ever be taken from you. 8. The rebirth of love. After ego death, after the mourning and the silence, something miraculous happens. Love returns not as desire but as essence. You start to love the world again, the sunrise, the smell of rain, the faces of strangers. You see your twin flame in everything. The sky, the water, the music. Not because you're obsessed but because you've recognized the truth. They were never outside of you. The soul doesn't know separation. When ego dies, the boundaries between me and you dissolve. What remains is unity, the same energy, expressing itself in two bodies, two stories, two hearts, but one consciousness. And in that realization, you no longer need to hold on. Because you understand, nothing real can ever be lost. 9. The return of inner peace. Liberation doesn't roar. It hums. It arrives quietly, in the form of peace that no longer depends on circumstances. You stop seeking signs. You stop waiting for messages. You stop checking the clock or the calendar, wondering when reunion will come. Instead, you wake up and feel a still joy simply because you exist. You found the home you were searching for, not in their arms but in your own heart. That is liberation. Not a moment of triumph, but a state of surrender. Not an arrival, but a remembering. You have not lost love. You have become it. 10. Living beyond the illusion of loss. The greatest freedom is the understanding that love is not something to gain or lose. It is what you are. The twin flame journey strips away everything that obscures this truth. When you stop equating loss with failure, everything changes. You see that endings are beginnings in disguise. You learn to bless people as they go. You learn that letting go is not weakness but trust. Trust that the universe always replaces illusion with truth. And perhaps one day in divine timing your twin flame returns, not because you chased but because you both became free enough to meet again without fear. And if they don't return, it doesn't matter, because love never left. It simply expanded beyond two bodies into everything you touch, everything you breathe, everything you are. That is not loss. That is liberation. Closing reflection. If you're standing in the ruins of what once was, if you're holding the pieces of a story that no longer fits, know this: you are not being punished. You are being purified. Letting go is not the end of love. It is the beginning of truth. Because love, when freed from possession, becomes infinite. So exhale. Release your grip. Bless what was, embrace what is, and trust what will be. The ego mourns endings, but the soul smiles because it knows nothing real is ever lost. Only illusions die. Chapter 6. The Many Small Deaths, How Every Trigger and Release Deepens Your Awakening. Not all deaths come with noise and finality. Some come quietly, through a sigh, a tear, a realization that something you once clung to no longer defines you. In the twin flame journey, these are known as the small deaths, moments when the ego crumbles piece by piece, not in one grand collapse but through countless soft surrenders. They are the hidden initiations of your awakening. And while they may look like heartbreak, rejection, or endings, each one is actually a rebirth, doorway through which more light can enter your being. This chapter is about those deaths, the ones you barely notice yet that shape everything. 1. The death of expectation. One of the first illusions to die on the twin flame path is expectation. You come into the connection with ideas of what love should look like: communication, commitment, mutual effort, reciprocated emotion. But your twin flame doesn't follow the script. They come and go, open and close, appear and disappear in ways that seem illogical. You try to make sense of it, to rationalize it, to fix it, and nothing works. The ego screams, "This isn't how love is supposed to be." But the soul whispers, "Love doesn't have to look like you imagined." Each unmet expectation is a small death. You lose the fantasy. You lose the illusion of control. And in that loss you gain truth. You begin to realize that real love is not performance. It's presence. It doesn't need to fit your narrative. It needs only to be felt here now without conditions. When you stop expecting and start accepting, something inside you exhales. And in that breath, another piece of the old self dissolves. 2. The death of the victim. At some point the narrative shifts. You stop saying, "They did this to me," and start asking, "What is this showing me about myself?" This is one of the most painful deaths. The death of victimhood. For so long the ego thrived on the story of unfairness. It needed someone to blame to justify its pain. But blame is a chain that keeps you bound to suffering. When you begin to take ownership of your emotions, not responsibility for their actions but for your reactions, you reclaim your power. You start to see that every trigger was a mirror, not a punishment. That every rejection was redirecting you back to self-worth. That every silence was teaching you to listen inward instead of outward. And as that awareness deepens, the need to be the victim dies, quietly but completely. You realize that no one ever truly hurt you. They only revealed where you still hurt yourself. 3. The death of control. Control is the ego's last defense. When everything feels uncertain, the ego grasps for stability. If I can predict the outcome, I can stay safe. So you analyze every message, overthink every silence, plan every possible scenario. But the more you try to hold on, the faster life slips through your fingers. Control and love cannot coexist. Because love is wild, fluid, unpredictable, and it demands surrender. The moment you let go of needing to know what comes next, something miraculous happens. The fear starts to fade. The energy begins to flow. Synchronicities return. You realize that trust is not built through certainty but through surrender. And every time you release control of the timeline of your twin flame, of how the journey should unfold, another layer of ego dies. That death is freedom. 4. The death of identification. You once defined yourself by the connection. I am their counterpart. I am the runner. I am the chaser. These labels gave the ego comfort. They created a sense of belonging in the chaos. But eventually, even those labels feel heavy. You start to see that you are not your role, you are the consciousness playing it. You realize that your worth doesn't depend on whether union happens, or who awakens first, or who apologizes. You were whole before this journey began, and you'll remain whole long after it ends. When you release the identity of the one who is suffering, or the one who is waiting, you return to neutrality, the pure state of being. And that's when the most profound peace arrives. The peace of knowing you are not the story. You are the observer. You are the love that holds all the stories. 5. The death of old cycles. Ego death rarely happens once. It comes in waves, and each wave clears a deeper layer. You may think you've healed, and then a message arrives. A memory resurfaces. A trigger hits your heart like lightning, and suddenly you're back in the storm. This is not regression. It's refinement. Every cycle returns to show you what still lingers in the corners of your consciousness. Each revisit invites you to respond differently, not with fear but with awareness. When you stop reacting the same way, the pattern dissolves. The universe doesn't repeat lessons to punish you. It repeats them until you embody the truth. And each time you choose love over fear, presence over panic, faith over doubt, another small death occurs. The ego weakens. The soul strengthens. 6. The death of the happy ending. For many, the hardest death is the death of the fairy tale. You imagined that once you met your twin flame, the pain would stop, the doubts would vanish, and everything would fall into place. But the truth is far more profound. The twin flame journey isn't about reaching a happy ending. It's about awakening to eternal wholeness. Union isn't a finish line. It's a frequency. And until you embody that frequency within yourself, the external union cannot sustain itself. When you let go of chasing the fairy tale, you make space for something real. A love that doesn't depend on a script or outcome. It doesn't demand promises. It exists in every breath, every act of compassion, every quiet moment of gratitude. And in that moment, you understand that you didn't lose your happy ending. You transcended it. 7. The death of resistance. Every time you resist what is, you suffer. You resist the silence. You resist the distance. You resist the changes that life brings. But eventually resistance becomes exhaustion. You realize that no amount of fighting can undo divine timing. So you surrender. Not in defeat but in acceptance. You stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and start whispering, "Thank you for showing me." You stop trying to control the tide and instead learn to float. When you stop resisting, energy begins to flow again. You start to see beauty in the breakdown, purpose in the pain, and blessings in the endings. Each time you surrender to what is, the ego dies a little more. And what replaces it is peace. A peace that no circumstance can touch. 8. The death of separation. Perhaps the most sacred of all the small deaths is this. Realizing that separation was never real. You thought they were gone. You believed you were alone. But then, in a quiet moment, a song, a dream, a breeze, you feel them again. Not as a person but as energy. Not as longing but as presence. And you understand, they were never outside of me. The separation was only an illusion of perception. A veil created by the ego to learn oneness through contrast. This death is not painful. It's peaceful. It's the end of longing, the end of chasing, the end of believing that love can ever be lost. From here on, everything changes. 9. The death that leads to life. All these little deaths, the deaths of expectation, control, identity, resistance, lead to one final truth. Nothing real dies. What falls away was never you. It was the illusion of you. The soul doesn't mourn these deaths. It celebrates them. Because each time something false fades, more of your true essence shines through. And one day you'll look back and realize that the person who entered this journey, the one who feared, chased, and doubted, no longer exists. What remains is love. Not as emotion but as awareness. Not as possession but as presence. The love that remains is unshakable, untouchable, eternal. Because it is you. 10. The quiet rebirth. After so many deaths, the soul becomes light. You no longer carry the weight of old narratives. You no longer need to understand every detail. You simply live fully, freely, fearlessly. You wake up with gratitude. You move through your day with gentleness. You feel your twin flame's energy not as pain, but as harmony. This is what rebirth feels like, not dramatic, but subtle. Not loud, but luminous. It's the moment you realize you no longer seek peace because you are peace. You no longer seek love because you embody it. Every small death brought you closer to this, the simple, breathtaking truth that you were never incomplete. You were always whole. Closing reflection. So if you feel like you're dying 1,000 tiny deaths, remember, you are not breaking down, you are breaking open. Every surrender, every tear, every moment of stillness is a funeral for a false self and a birth for your truth. Let each death be sacred. Let each release be holy. Because the soul doesn't mourn endings, it sings through them. And when all the illusions are gone, when all the masks have fallen, you'll stand in the quiet glow of what remains. Pure consciousness, infinite love, eternal peace. Chapter 7. The Twin Flame as a Catalyst, How They Trigger the Awakening of Your True Self. Every soul longs for awakening, but few realize what awakening truly demands. It is not a gentle path of light and bliss, it is fire. And in the twin flame journey, that fire often takes human form. Your twin flame is not just a lover, not just a companion of fate. They are a catalyst, the divine spark sent to awaken you from the deep sleep of illusion. Their purpose is not to complete you, but to shatter everything that is not you. This is the paradox of sacred love. The person who triggers your deepest wounds is also the one guiding you toward your highest truth. 1. The meeting, a collision of energies. When you meet your twin flame, it doesn't feel like an ordinary encounter. Something electric moves through your being. A recognition so ancient and overwhelming that time itself seems to pause. It feels like destiny, like coming home, like remembering something you had forgotten for centuries. And in a sense, it is all of those things. On an energetic level, the meeting ignites two dormant frequencies, one masculine, one feminine, both mirroring the divine within each other. It's a collision not of bodies but of souls. This meeting triggers what mystics call the soul activation, the point at which both souls begin to awaken to their higher purpose. But awakening by its nature requires purification. And purification means burning away the illusions the ego has built. That's where the catalyst begins its work. 2. The mirror that burns. The twin flame is not a mirror that flatters you. They are a mirror that reveals you. They reflect your highest potential, yes, but they also reflect your deepest shadows. The love between you acts like light, and when light shines, it exposes what was hidden in the dark. Every fear, every insecurity, every unhealed wound begins to surface. You see yourself in their eyes, and what once felt beautiful now becomes uncomfortable. Why? Because they reflect both what you love and what you've denied within yourself. When they withdraw, it triggers your abandonment wound. When they confront you, it exposes your need to control. When they love you unconditionally, it reveals the parts of you that don't believe you deserve it. This reflection is not meant to punish, it's meant to purify. They are not here to make you suffer. They are here to make you see. 3. The triggering fire as teacher. At first, these triggers feel unbearable. You might find yourself asking, why do they hurt me if they're my divine counterpart? But remember, fire doesn't hurt gold, it refines it. Your twin flame is that fire. Every argument, every silence, every misunderstanding is alchemy in motion. You are being stripped of illusions, the illusion that you can control love, that you can earn worth, that you can lose connection. The ego interprets these moments as chaos, but the soul recognizes them as sacred combustion. Each trigger invites you to look within and ask, what is this showing me about myself? What fear is asking to be healed here? What belief am I ready to release? The pain, though sharp, is a teacher. It teaches you boundaries without walls, love without attachment, surrender without fear. And slowly, the fire begins to transform from destruction into illumination. 4. The separation, the space that heals. After the ignition comes the separation, the infamous runner and chaser stage. For one or both, the intensity becomes too much. The mirror feels too confronting. So one soul runs not from the other but from themselves. It's easy to interpret this separation as rejection, but on a higher level it's sacred space. It allows both souls to process, to heal, to integrate what the fire has revealed. Imagine two magnets pulled apart so they can recalibrate their energy fields. That's what separation does. It gives the universe room to realign your frequencies. During this time, the true awakening begins. You learn detachment, self-love, and the art of surrender. You realize that chasing the other is just another way of avoiding yourself. Your twin flame catalyzed the explosion. Now you must walk through the aftermath alone, but never abandoned, because even when they're gone, their energy still works within you like divine medicine, pushing you toward your highest vibration. 5. The awakening of the inner masculine and feminine. The most powerful aspect of the twin flame catalyst is inner union. When two twin flames meet, the external dynamic runner/chaser, giver/receiver, pursuer/avoider, mirrors the internal Imbalance of divine masculine and feminine within each soul. The separation is a divine mechanism forcing each counterpart to awaken their inner opposite energy. The chaser must awaken their inner masculine, the energy of action, boundaries, and sovereignty. The runner must awaken their inner feminine, the energy of vulnerability, intuition, and surrender. When both begin to balance these polarities within themselves, the outer chaos starts to settle. The connection stabilizes because the internal energies are harmonizing. This is the true meaning of union, not two halves becoming one but two wholes resonating in divine balance. Your twin flame didn't awaken you so you could depend on them. They awakened you so you could find the missing half inside yourself. 6. The awakening of purpose. As the inner work deepens, another shift occurs. Your focus moves from the connection to the mission. Twin flames are not just romantic partners. They are spiritual catalysts. For collective evolution, their connection holds a frequency of unconditional love, powerful enough to heal others simply by existing in balance. Once the ego-based obsession fades, you begin to feel a pull toward something larger, a creative purpose, a healing path, a form of service that radiates your soul's truth. Your twin flame activates not only your heart, but your calling. They awaken your desire to live authentically, to express your gifts, to bring light to others. And the more you align with that purpose, the more their energy integrates within you, even from afar. You begin to understand that union is not something you wait for. It's something you become. 7. The mirror becomes the window. As the triggers fade and the wounds heal, the mirror your twin flame once held stops reflecting pain and starts reflecting peace. What once made you flinch now makes you smile. You no longer see them as your source of happiness or pain. You see them as a window into the divine. Through them you glimpse the face of God, the infinite, the eternal, the love that lives in all things. Every time you forgive, every time you choose love instead of fear, the window widens. You see more clearly that they are not separate from you, that nothing ever was. Your twin flame was never the destination. They were the portal. The journey through them was the journey home, to yourself, to love, to God. 8. The alchemy of reflection. When both souls have done the inner work, their energies begin to harmonize naturally. You no longer need to force reunion, because reunion happens within. Even if the physical connection remains distant, the energetic connection feels complete. You no longer ache, you radiate. This is the moment when the connection turns into alchemy, the transformation of pain into wisdom, separation into unity, self into soul. The very wounds that once tore you apart now become the channels through which love flows freely. You begin to understand that nothing was wasted, nothing was wrong. Every silence, every tear, every heartbreak was a brushstroke in the masterpiece of your awakening. Your twin flame wasn't here to stay. They were here to transform you. 9. Gratitude, the sign of true awakening. The ultimate proof of awakening is gratitude. One day you wake up and realize you no longer wish things had gone differently. You no longer resent them for leaving or yourself for breaking. You simply feel thankful for everything. Thankful for the love that woke you up. Thankful for the pain that purified you. Thankful for the mirror that forced you to see. This gratitude is not naive. It's transcendent. It comes from the understanding that your twin flame was never here to complete your story. They were here to rewrite your consciousness. You can now bless them in your prayers without longing, without sadness, only love. Because what they gave you was the greatest gift of all, yourself. 10. The eternal flame. At the end of this chapter, after all the fire, tears, and surrender, what remains is an eternal flame. It burns not for reunion, but for remembrance. It's the inner light that no longer flickers with uncertainty. The twin flame connection was never about finding someone else. It was about igniting that flame within. And once it burns, it never goes out. You carry it with you. In every breath, every kindness, every act of courage. It's the divine heartbeat inside you whispering, "You are love. You always were." The catalyst may have left your life, but the awakening remains. And now you are the flame, steady, luminous, eternal. Closing reflection. So if your twin flame has triggered you, broken you, or walked away, know this. They were never your destroyer. They were your mirror, your teacher, your sacred ignition. They didn't come to give you peace. They came to show you where you'd been withholding it from yourself. They didn't come to stay forever. They came to awaken forever within you. And now, as you stand in the ashes of who you once were, you realize that the fire was never against you. It was for you. Because through them, you met the most powerful force in existence, the truth of your own soul. Chapter 8. When the soul rises, living from the heart after ego death. After the fire comes the silence. After the collapse comes the breath. And in that stillness, when everything false has burned away, something extraordinary begins to awaken. This is the stage many call the soul's rising. It's the moment when the ego no longer leads, when the wounds no longer define you, and when love no longer feels like a battlefield but like a homecoming. You begin to live not from the mind but from the heart. Not from survival but from truth. This is not a sudden transformation, but a gentle dawn, light spreading through the ruins of the old self. 1. The silence after the storm. In the aftermath of ego death, life becomes strangely quiet. No more obsessive thoughts, no more need to control, no more inner war. First, this silence feels foreign, even empty. You've lived so long with noise that peace feels unnatural. But soon, you realize this stillness isn't absence. It's presence. You start to sense something subtle yet powerful within you. A calm awareness watching everything without judgment. It doesn't react, it doesn't grasp, it simply is. That awareness is your soul. It has always been there, buried beneath the chatter of the ego. And now for the first time it speaks. Its voice is quiet but clear, and it doesn't use words. It speaks through intuition, synchronicity, sensations, and a deep knowing that transcends logic. This is your new compass. 2. The return of the heart. The ego protects itself through walls. The soul connects through openness. When those walls finally crumble, the heart begins to expand. You feel emotions more deeply than ever, not because you are weak but because you are finally alive. The heart is no longer guarded, but it is wise. It no longer seeks love to fill a void. It gives love because it overflows. You stop trying to earn affection, because you've discovered that you are love itself. In the early stages of your twin flame awakening, love was intensity, passion, longing, chaos. Now it's peace. It's the quiet joy of simply existing. The gentle warmth that doesn't demand anything in return. You begin to understand that love isn't something you fall into. It's something you rise. 3. Seeing through the eyes of the soul. When the soul takes the lead, perception shifts dramatically. You no longer see life as happening to you. You see it as unfolding through you. Every challenge becomes an invitation to grow. Every person a mirror reflecting a part of yourself. You stop labeling experiences as good or bad, they simply are. Each carries wisdom. Each contributes to the expansion of consciousness. This is living through the eyes of the soul. A perspective where judgment dissolves and compassion blooms. You see your twin flame differently. 2. You no longer need them to complete you, to validate you, or even to stay. You recognize them as an extension of the same divine energy flowing through your veins. The pain, the longing, the chase, all of it fades into understanding. You realize the purpose of the journey was never to unite two people, but to awaken one soul in two forms. 4. Freedom from the story. Ego thrives on stories, what happened, what should have been, what could still be. But when the soul rises, those stories lose their grip. You stop replaying the past and rehearsing the future. You stop defining yourself by what was or what might come. Instead, you begin to live from the eternal now. In this moment, nothing is missing. Nothing is broken. You are whole, complete, infinite. This is liberation, not from life but into it. You no longer escape reality. You embody it fully. Even mundane moments become sacred. The sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your own breath. You begin to notice how divine love flows through everything. Through music, through strangers, through silence. And in realizing that, you stop searching for love altogether. Because you see that you were never apart from it. 5. The body becomes the temple. As the soul integrates, you begin to feel a deeper connection to your physical form. The body, once dismissed as limited, now feels sacred, the vessel of divine energy. You start listening to it, feeding it what nourishes, resting when it asks, moving with mindfulness. You realize the body isn't an obstacle to enlightenment, it's the expression of it. Your heart chakra, once heavy with pain, now radiates warmth. Your throat speaks truth without fear. Your third eye perceives beyond appearances. The entire being becomes a bridge between heaven and earth, spirit and matter, love and form. This embodiment is the soul's rising in motion. It's not about escaping the human experience. It's about sanctifying it. You understand that to live spiritually is not to float above life, but to walk gently within it. Fully present, deeply grounded, endlessly connected. 6. The soul's wisdom in action. The soul doesn't rush. It doesn't force. It moves in harmony with the natural flow of existence. When it rises, your choices begin to shift. You no longer make decisions out of fear, guilt, or need, but out of alignment. You say yes when something feels expansive, no when it feels heavy. You trust your intuition even when logic disagrees. You act from inspiration rather than obligation. And somehow everything starts to align effortlessly. People, opportunities, and events begin to appear exactly when they're meant to. This is not coincidence, it's synchronicity. It's the universe responding to your vibration. When you live from soul, you no longer chase. You attract. You no longer strive. You allow. You no longer survive. You create. 7. Relationships as mirrors of conscious love. Once the soul rises, relationships change completely. You no longer enter connections to fill emptiness or to fix others. Instead, you meet people from wholeness. Every bond becomes a sacred exchange, a mirror of divine energy flowing in two directions. You may find that your twin flame reappears, not because you begged, but because your vibration has shifted. And if they don't, it no longer causes pain. You love them without attachment. You honor them without possession. You bless their path as you walk your own. This kind of love is no longer romantic. It's universal. You begin to see the divine in everyone. In the eyes of strangers, in the kindness of friends, even in those who challenge you. That's when you realize the journey was never just about two souls. It was about learning to love the whole world as yourself. 8. Service as the language of the soul. When the soul rises, love seeks expression. It doesn't want to stay contained, it wants to serve. You may feel called to create, to write, to heal, to teach, to guide, to inspire. The purpose is not to impress or achieve, but to share the overflow of love within you. This is the next phase of the twin flame awakening, turning inner union into collective contribution. Your existence becomes medicine for others. Your peace becomes permission. Your presence becomes proof that love is real. You no longer ask, "What can I get?" but "How can I give?" And in giving, you realize that giving and receiving were never separate, they were always one flow of love moving through you. 9. Grace, the soul's signature. As the soul rises, grace begins to permeate your life. Even in uncertainty, you feel guided. Even in challenges, you sense purpose. Even in solitude, you feel surrounded by love. Miracles become ordinary, not grand spectacles but small signs. A song at the perfect moment, a stranger's smile, a sudden feeling of peace. For no reason. Grace is the universe whispering, "I'm here." It's proof that you are never alone, that the same divine intelligence guiding galaxies is also guiding you. You realize that you don't have to struggle for alignment, you are alignment. And in that realization, you finally relax into life. The soul doesn't strive to ascend anymore. It simply shines. 10. The eternal presence of love. When the soul rises, love becomes your natural state. You no longer need to search, prove, or hold. It flows through you like breath, effortless, infinite, alive. You walk through life as love, in motion. Every glance, every word, every silence becomes sacred. You begin to understand that the twin flame journey was never about finding another person. It was about remembering that you were never apart from love to begin with. And as that realization deepens, life becomes an expression of devotion, not to a partner, but to existence itself. The soul bows to everything, joy and sorrow, light and shadow, beginning and end, because it knows all of it is God in disguise. Closing reflection. So if you've reached this stage, if you feel lighter, clearer, freer, know that this is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of true living. You are no longer chasing awakening. You are embodying it. You are no longer asking for signs, you are the sign. The soul's rise is not a destination, it's a state of being. It's the moment you realize that love was never something to find, but something to remember. And now, as you breathe in this awareness, you understand the deepest truth of all. The journey was never about finding your twin flame. It was about becoming the flame itself, eternal, radiant, divine. Chapter 9. Rebirth through love. When the soul replaces the ego in relationships. When the ego dies, it doesn't vanish completely, it transforms. What once sought control, validation, and safety begins to dissolve into something softer, deeper, infinitely wiser. This transformation births a new way of loving. Not from fear but from truth. Not from attachment but from awareness. It is the moment when the soul takes the place of the ego in love, and for the first time you understand what love actually is. This is rebirth through love. It's not about finding the perfect partner or getting your twin flame back. It's about stepping into a love so vast that it can hold both union and separation, both joy and loss, both silence and song. It's about becoming love itself. 1. The death of conditional love. For most of your life, love came with conditions. You gave to get. You held to feel safe. You needed to be seen, chosen, remembered. And that was human, it's how the ego loves. The ego's love is a transaction. If you meet my needs, I'll stay. If you change, I'll forgive. If you leave, I'll crumble. But when the soul rises, all those contracts dissolve. You begin to see that true love cannot be earned or lost. Simply is. The soul's love doesn't bargain. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't love because it loves through distance, through silence, through transformation. Does love, at its purest, doesn't ask for anything in return. It simply flows where it's needed, without fear of depletion. When you experience love this way, it no longer feels like possession. Feels like presence. 2. Love as reflection, not reward. When the ego led your relationships, love felt like a mirror of approval. I am lovable because you love me. Now when the soul leads, love becomes a mirror of truth. You reflect the love already within me. This shift is monumental. It moves you from dependency to resonance, from insecurity to authenticity. You no longer seek someone to fill the gaps inside you. You become so full that love naturally overflows. You stop asking, how can they make me happy? And start asking, how can I embody happiness and share it freely? The other person, whether your twin flame, a soulmate, a friend, becomes not your source but your reflection. You see them as light meeting light, soul recognizing soul. And because of that, you no longer fear losing them, because you cannot lose what is part of you. 3. From attachment to allowance. Ego love clings. It fears absence, misreads silence, and turns uncertainty into threat. But soul love allows. It allows the other to change. It allows the bond to breathe. It allows the connection to evolve in its own divine timing. Where the ego once said, you must stay, the soul now says, you are free. And paradoxically, this freedom deepens connection instead of breaking it. Because love rooted in control creates distance. Love rooted in freedom creates trust. When you allow, you stop trying to shape the other person's path. You simply hold space for them to become who they are. You realize that love is not about two people holding each other tightly, but about two souls walking side by side, both facing the same light. 4. Communication becomes communion. When love is led by ego, communication is often a battle. Who's right, who's wrong, who wins? But when the soul leads, communication becomes communion. It's not about speaking to be heard, but listening to understand. You no longer speak from defense but from awareness. You express not to change the other but to share your truth lovingly. Even silence becomes sacred. You no longer panic when there are no words, because you sense the energy beneath them. The soul knows that love doesn't always need language. It's felt in the spaces between sentences. This kind of connection cannot be forced. It can only be received. And that's the miracle. When you stop demanding to be understood, you become understanding itself. 5. Compassion replaces judgment. When ego was in charge, love often turned into judgment. You measured, compared, and tried to fix others from your own sense of lack. But soul love doesn't fix, it sees. It recognizes that every person, including your twin flame, is exactly where they need to be on their own journey. It doesn't condemn their delays, mistakes, or fears. It honors them as necessary lessons. You begin to see the innocence in everyone's pain. You see that even those who hurt you were acting from their own unconscious wounds. From this place, forgiveness becomes natural, not as a moral act, but as an energetic truth. You release resentment because it no longer fits the frequency you live in. Compassion becomes your new language, and through it, love flows without distortion. 6. Love is presence, not performance. In the old paradigm, you worked for love, you earned it through effort, sacrifice, perfection. But when the soul replaces the ego, you realize you don't need to perform. Love doesn't require qualifications. It only requires presence. You stop overthinking what to say, how to act, how to be enough. You simply are. And that authenticity becomes magnetic. It draws in those who resonate with your truth, and gently releases those who don't. The soul's love doesn't shout, it emanates. It doesn't try to convince. It radiates peace that others can feel without explanation. The irony is that when you no longer chase approval, you become profoundly loved, not because you tried, but because you're finally real. 7. The twin flame is conscious partnership. When the soul leads, the twin flame connection changes form. It's no longer a roller coaster of highs and lows, it becomes a field of mutual awakening. If you reunite physically, the love feels steady, grounded, and sacred. It's not built on chemistry or desire, but on recognition and respect. Each partner mirrors the divine back to the other. Conflicts become catalysts for growth, not war zones of blame. If you remain apart, the connection still flourishes energetically. You no longer need contact to feel union because you've realized that union is a frequency, not a condition. You and your counterpart are now co-creators of light, two flames burning from the same source, illuminating the collective consciousness through your evolution. That is what it means to love as a soul. 8. The soul's boundaries. Love without losing yourself. Contrary to what some believe, unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance. When the soul replaces the ego, boundaries become sacred acts of self-respect. You no longer set boundaries to punish or protect the ego. You set them to preserve harmony. You say no when something dishonors your energy. You walk away when love becomes manipulation. You remain open but not porous. This is love without martyrdom, love that includes yourself. The soul knows that to love another deeply, you must also love yourself completely. And from that completeness, every relationship you touch becomes balanced, honest, and empowering. Boundaries are not walls, they're invitations for others to meet you in truth. 9. Love becomes a spiritual practice. When ego ruled, love was chaotic. Now love becomes sacred discipline, a daily devotion to seeing through the eyes of spirit. You practice love the way others practice prayer. Through patience, through gratitude, through awareness. You find holiness in the ordinary. A shared smile, a kind word, a gentle breath. You begin to treat everyone as divine reflection because now you know they are. Love becomes less about who you love and more about how you love. Even your pain becomes part of the practice. You no longer run from it. You use it as a teacher, a reminder to return to the heart again and again. And every time you do, you expand a little more into the infinite. 10. The return of divine union. When the soul fully replaces the ego, love transcends polarity. Masculine and feminine, giver and receiver, self and other, all merge into one flow. You experience unity, not as an abstract idea, but as living truth. The divine masculine within you rises as presence and purpose. The divine feminine awakens as compassion and creation. Together they dance, not in opposition but in harmony. And whether your twin flame stands beside you or not, you feel the sacred marriage within. That union radiates outward through your art, your work, your relationships, your breath. You become the living embodiment of the love you once sought. This is rebirth through love. The moment when the soul sits upon the throne where the ego once ruled, and the entire kingdom of your being bows to its light. Closing reflection. So here you stand, reborn, renewed, radiant. The person who once begged for love has vanished. In their place stands a being who is love itself. You no longer chase connection, you create it. You no longer fear endings, you bless them. You no longer search for your twin flame. You carry their energy within your every heartbeat. Love has taken its rightful place, not as emotion but as essence. And in that essence you are free. Because when the soul replaces the ego, love ceases to be something you fall into. It becomes the ground you walk upon, the breath you exhale, the light you are. Chapter 10. The beginning, not the end. Living in union with all that is. Every ending on the twin flame journey is an illusion. The reunion, the separation, the silence, the breakthrough, all of it has never been about reaching a destination. It has always been about coming home, not to another person but to all that is, to the wholeness that has existed within you since the beginning of time. When you reach this stage, something profound happens. You stop asking, when will union happen? And begin to live as union itself. You are no longer a seeker. You are the light that was once searching. This is not the end of the twin flame journey. This is its true beginning. 1. The great homecoming. The soul's final return is not to heaven or another realm. It is to this moment. Here now, in the body, in the breath, in the simplicity of being. After so many storms, the calm no longer feels temporary. It feels eternal. You no longer need closure because you have become the space in which everything opens. This is the homecoming. The return to yourself as divine consciousness experiencing itself through human form. The sense of separation between you and life dissolves. You begin to see that the same energy animating your heart beats through the stars, through the ocean, through every living thing. When you look into the eyes of a stranger, you see the spark of your twin flame. When you hear laughter, you hear the voice of God. When you breathe, you feel the rhythm of the cosmos inside your chest. You realize there was never anything to find, only something to remember. 2. The end of seeking. The ego thrives on searching for purpose, for meaning, for completion. It tells you that peace exists somewhere else. In reunion, in success, in a future version of you. But when union becomes your natural state, seeking loses its flavor. You no longer need to chase anything because you've discovered that you are what you were chasing. It's not apathy, it's serenity. It's not emptiness, it's fullness. Life becomes effortless not because challenges disappear, but because resistance does. You don't need to control the outcome anymore, you trust the flow because you are the flow. The need to understand fades, replaced by quiet wonder. You begin to see life not as a puzzle to solve, but as a poem to live. Every experience, joy or sorrow, connection or solitude, becomes part of the divine dance unfolding perfectly in its time. 3. Living as union. To live in union is to live with an open heart, fully, fearlessly, without division. You stop drawing lines between spiritual and mundane, between sacred and ordinary. You see God in traffic lights, in coffee steam, in laughter, in heartbreak. You stop looking for signs because everything is a sign. You stop praying for guidance because every breath is prayer. The whole world becomes your twin flame, reflecting love back to you in infinite forms. When you hold a child, you feel divine innocence. When you comfort a friend, you feel divine compassion. When you sit in silence, you feel divine presence. The ego once believed union meant two souls merging into one. But the soul knows the truth. Union means recognizing that everything has always been one. 4. The integration of duality. Even after awakening, life continues. Bills, emotions, weather, change. You are still human. You still cry. You still bleed. But something has shifted. You no longer resist duality, you integrate it. You understand that darkness is not the enemy of light. It's the canvas upon which light is painted. You don't reject fear. You hold it with compassion. You don't suppress anger. You listen to its wisdom. Every emotion, every experience becomes an expression of divine intelligence in motion. Union is not about escaping duality. It's about embracing it until it dissolves into harmony. You realize that God is not only in the sunrise, He's in the storm. Not only in joy, but also in grief. Not only in union, but also in separation. The soul no longer divides the world into opposites. It sees love flowing through everything, even through pain. That is the ultimate healing. 5. The twin flame connection in the new light. When you and your twin flame reach this vibration, the connection changes completely. It is no longer charged with longing, anxiety, or the need for validation. It becomes quiet, clear, sacred. You may communicate telepathically or feel their energy without effort. You may reunite physically or you may not. Either way, the love remains, undisturbed by form or distance. You understand now that the physical reunion was never the goal. It was a possible reflection of an inner truth that already exists. Union doesn't mean being together in the same room, it means vibrating in the same frequency. Love without fear, connection without possession, peace without condition. You love them not because you must, but because you cannot not love them. Their existence is part of your own heartbeat, and you bless them whether they walk beside you or beyond your sight. That is what real union feels like, not fireworks but stillness, not drama but devotion, not attachment but freedom. 6. Life as meditation. When union becomes your nature, every moment turns into meditation. Washing dishes feels sacred. Listening to the wind feels holy. Sitting in silence feels like communion with the universe. You no longer need to escape into spiritual practices to find peace. Peace lives inside your awareness of the now. You realize meditation is not something you do. It's something you are. It's the state of being fully present with life, without resistance, without judgment, without separation. And in that presence you feel a divine pulse, the same rhythm that guided your twin flame journey, still guiding you, now from within. It whispers, you are safe. You are whole. You are home. 7. The new way of loving humanity. As the boundaries of you dissolve, compassion expands naturally. You begin to love not just your twin flame but everyone. You feel the pain of strangers as your own. Not because you're empathic but because you recognize oneness. You no longer need reasons to be kind. Kindness becomes instinct. You don't serve humanity from obligation, but from overflow. You find joy in giving. Not because you're a savior, but because love can't help but share itself. In this stage, love is no longer personal. It's universal. You love through art, through words, through silence, through your mere existence. You become the embodiment of divine compassion, not as a saint, but as a human who remembers their divinity. This is how the twin flame energy fulfills its highest mission, not by ending in a romance, but by awakening love across the planet, one heart at a time. 8. Gratitude as the soul's language. Gratitude becomes your natural vibration. Not the gratitude that needs reasons but the one that arises simply because you are. You thank the pain for it sculpted your strength. You thank the distance for it carved space for freedom. You thank your twin flame, for they were the mirror through which you saw eternity. You even thank yourself, the version that cried, begged, prayed, fell apart and kept going. Gratitude turns every scar into gold, every ending into expansion. It keeps you humble yet exalted, grounded yet divine. The soul speaks only one language now, thank you. 9. Living beyond the journey. Eventually, even the phrase twin flame journey dissolves. You no longer define yourself by it. It was the bridge that carried you home, and now you walk freely on the other side. You don't forget the journey, you honor it. But you also understand that awakening doesn't make you special. It makes you real. You become fully human again, but this time with awareness. You laugh. You work. You love. You rest. Yet everything feels infused with divinity. You are no longer trying to escape the world. You are here to bless it. The journey has fulfilled its purpose, to return you to life wide awake, heart open, soul steady. 10. The infinite beginning. There is a moment when you realize that enlightenment isn't the end. It's the beginning of deeper love. The more you awaken, the more you realize how infinite the universe is, and how endlessly it invites you to expand. Union with all that is not a final state. It's an ever-unfolding creation. You are both the artist and the art, the lover and the beloved, the seeker and the found. You live as love, but you also live through love, rediscovering it again and again in every sunrise, every laugh, every heartbeat. This is the eternal beginning, the place where you no longer need to hold on to anything, because you are everything. The twin flame journey didn't end when the ego died or when the soul awakened. It began here, in this awareness that love never stops growing. You are not returning to who you were before this love. You are becoming everything you were meant to be because of it. Closing reflection. So here you stand at the threshold of infinity. No longer the seeker, no longer the wounded one, no longer the chaser or the runner. You are the flame itself. You are the union you longed for. You are the divine consciousness experiencing itself as human love. Look back with gratitude, look forward with wonder, and rest in the present with peace. Because the journey that once tore you apart has brought you home to the truth you can never lose. You were never separate from love. You were never apart from your twin flame. You were never anything but whole. This is not the end. This is the beginning of eternal union with all that is.